Affinity Photo can be used to create all kinds of amazing designs, such as this. This one, a swirl design, can be created very quickly in Affinity Photo, PC or Mac. And these are the steps. First thing to do is use the spiral tool. So spiral tool you can find over here. Now the spiral tool may be in a different position depending on how you set your tools up. So here's mine, but you might find it in the various shapes as well down the bottom. So I'm just going to go and select that. Now by default you'll probably get something like this, and probably slightly different from that. So let's just reduce the size down, maybe that. So you could see you've got a stroke, but you won't have a fill. I don't want a fill, but I want to extend this width to maybe a bit more than the default. So I'm just going to increase this. I'm just going to increase this and increase this, increase this. Now, unfortunately, with the spiral tool, you can't convert it into a filled design. This is a stroke design. So stroke design, if you've got Affinity Designer, you could convert it. But there is a way around that. What you need to do is convert it via using rasterization. So I've set the value for this to 60 point. You could set it to say 70 point. Now the variety of different spirals can be created up here. I'm going with 5 and also arc angle of 90, inner radius and also linear. You can vary it of course, but this is the one that I'm going to go with here. All you need to do, make certain it's not over any edges. I always prefer to do that. Sometimes Affinity Designer, Affinity Photo, when you rasterize, you might suddenly find it getting cut off. So what I'm going to do, layer, and then down to rasterize. So rasterize, now it's filled, but obviously now it's frozen. You can't change it. It's no longer a spiral. You can no longer modify the number of turns, etc. And you can see it over here in the layers panel. And the reason I wanted to turn it into a filled design, a solid colour like this, is that I can now go over here with layer effects. So over here I've got a number of ones. I created this in a previous video. I'm just going to click one of these. Now you'll see it's in a panel called Styles. You can find that in Window and the Styles. All the panels here, layers, etc. can be found in the window up here. So Styles is the one you want. And I've created this one. And I'm just going to click that. And that applies an interesting effect. You can apply, say, another one. Click this one. And you can see, as I do that, different designs can be generated. Now, this one probably is the one that I think looks nicest. So I'm just going to click this one. So, layer effects. What are the effects I'm using here? Now, you can see now, since I've applied it, every time you apply these styles or layer effects, you'll see this little effects in the layer beside this, just here. And what you do, just go down here, you've got effects here. So you just click here. And now you can see all it's made up of is 3D. So 3D, make certain you highlight it, make certain the whole thing is selected, then you'll see all the settings. If you just click here, that just turns it on, doesn't reveal these. So you need to actually highlight this, then you've got this. Then you can see this is probably fairly complex. You've got a radius. Now I've pushed the radius up to 400. Well, how to do that? Because if you go over here, you've got the slider, and you'll notice it only goes up to 100. Well, you can end 400 or 300, whatever. You can enter a value that goes beyond the slider. The slider only goes up to 100. So just tab off that, and you've got 400. You can also change this as well. Now to change this setting, the depth, you might want to vary it. So you can see you can create different designs by changing the depth. You have to deselect this. So by default, this will be set. I don't want that. What I want is just to click there so it's not linked anymore. And I'm going to put this down to 100. So I've got a depth like that. And you can modify the soften, change it a bit. I'm just going to go for, say, 9. And the key thing really, probably more than anything, is this, the profile. So click here, and you can see this profile. It can be made up in loads of different ways. You don't have to go with this. You can tweak it, change it in all kinds of things, simply by just clicking and adding a little point here, and then just dragging this down. You can see by doing that, it will change there, and There's a subtle changing sometimes, but you can click and you can add quite a few. I don't know if there's a limit. There may be a limit. I've never encountered a limit. Sometimes it gets harder and harder to actually add, and you might find that you can't add in certain places, but it does seem to allow for quite a lot of these points. Okay, so once you've got that, you can always reset it as well. So if you want, you're unhappy with it, you can just go down here to some profiles that it comes with. You got that? I've got all these pushed up to the limit. You can see spec 100%, 100%, 100%. And you can also add additional lights. So you've got different lights and you can then change the colours, just subtle changes. But you can move this around and it will result in a different design. I'm going to go with about that. Okay, close. So I've got my design there. What I can now do is I can rasterize it. I want to rasterize it. After all that work, I'm going to rasterize it again. But the reason being, I don't want the effects to be there. I want it to be bundled into the actual layer. Go to layer, and you can do this all the time. So layer and rasterize, and it's quite useful because sometimes when you do various things such as brushes, whatever, or patterns, it might be that you find that the effect is ignored. It just doesn't see it. So to get around that, you have to bundle it in too. So just turn this off, preserve layer effects. So this will disappear. So rasterize, and then you can see it's now all bundled into the same pixel layer. Oh, now I can select part of this. I'm just going to go over here, and a great selection feature is this one. You could use, of course, other ones as well, elliptical, but I'm going to go with rectangular, and I'm just going to select part of this. This is what I want, that swirl design. There it is. You can see here's the swirl design. Turn it into a pattern. Very easy in Affinity Photo. Go to layer, and then down here to new pattern layer from selection. And you can do this with any kind of design, any kind of image. As long as you can select it, it will be turned into a pattern layer. So new pattern layer, and now you've got that, which looks pretty intense. But what you can also do is I can get rid of this. I don't need this anymore. I'm just going to delete it. This is the layer below. You can see it just behind. You could leave it, simply make it not visible, but it's too easy sometimes to select, though you can, of course, lock it as well to avoid that. Okay, let's just delete it anyway. So delete, and now you've got this. Only got this layer. What you can then do is go to the Move tool. This is the key tool for the pattern layer. You can manipulate it even more by going up here. And there's a mirror option, because at the moment you can see you've got these seams, which is okay. It looks fine. I'm not unhappy with that, but prefer the mirror to be set on. So mirror on, and now you can see you get this sort of design. And then you can see you can reduce this down. You can resize it, obviously, all the way there. Or you go this way. You just drag these handles. You can also go the other way if you want. You can also rotate it, create different designs that way. Also, you can make it smaller, squeeze it, and so on. There's a whole load of different ones. So let's just go with that. I'm just going to make it a bit smaller than that. So let's just, again, just drag. You need to drag on this bounding box. I'm going to now rasterize this. And there's a lot of rasterization here, isn't there? Well, you can rasterize it again. So this time, go to Layer, and then down to Rasterize. And now it's rasterized. This whole pattern layer is no longer a pattern. You can see it's been converted to a pixel over here. And as before, you can apply styles to it, or layer effects. Now you could just go here and use this, but I'm just going to maybe select one of these. Again, I can just click, as long as it's selected. So click there, and you can see now you get this design. You can click here, and sometimes the design changes, sometimes it will just ignore. But also what you can do is you can apply maybe a gradient or something. You might decide to have a gradient effect on this. So just go over here, and you can apply a gradient to this pixel layer. But you can also go again to effects if you want. Now, I've turned it into a pixel layer, and I think this is quite nice. This is a great endpoint. It's sort of very similar to the design I had right at the start. But you don't have to do this. What you can do, you can undo. Let's just undo. So I'm just going to turn this back into a pattern layer. That's by Command and Control Z. So undo, Now, unfortunately, if there's a lot of different transforms and things, and it does add up a lot, probably even quicker. If you want, just go to the history panel. Unfortunately, if you've got lots of transforms, it does seem that when you use the Command or Control Z to undo, sometimes it takes quite a bit to go back to that initial point there. But what you can also do is you can apply styles to this. Now, at the moment, it hasn't got a style, but as a pattern, you can also add styles. So you can go to Effects. This is another way of doing this. So click Effects, click there, and you can add 3D, or you can simply just go here and select one of these. Maybe select this style instead, and you can see you get that effect. Now this style, again, if you want to just quickly look, just double click here, and you've got this. And you can see you've got this design is exactly the same sort of profile as before. Now I've reduced down the radius 203, and also depth, again, just reduced down to 50, and also soften there. And this one actually's got 3 lights, so variety of lights, and you can set these up in all kinds of ways to create all kinds of different designs. So if you want, you can just move this around, and you can see as you move this around, it will change across the whole lot. And also you can change colour, so maybe decide you want green there, or maybe click there and maybe go for, say, black, and so on, so or brown, and you can again vary the direction. And this is independent. They're all independent. So you've got brown there. I'm manipulating the third one. If I go and select the second one, you can see that's blue. I can click on there, and I can then change that to say red or pink, and you get a different design. Now, at the end of the day, it's going to be much the same. I think there's sort of a little bit of change, but after a while, I don't think it really makes that much difference. Well, click close. Please check the previous video on how to create styles and things so you can see how to do this maybe at greater depth. Okay, so you've got this, but you can also add a pattern to this as well, because another thing in this, click here again, or I would say double click, is click. What you can do, just go to gradient overlay, and you can click here. Now, gradient overlay actually creates an interesting effect when you use patterns. That's why I wanted to point it out. This, for some weird reason, the pattern ignores this gradient. You can see you've got the colours over here, the blues, and you've got here, it blasted out, obviously with this gradient here. Very strange. It doesn't seem, after that, to follow the pattern particularly, certainly for the gradient part. And then what you can do, you can change the scale here, but you can also tweak this gradient. So you can click here, and you can see at the moment it's black and white. Unfortunately, it doesn't allow for support to the swatches. I would love to see that feature. It's one of those features that baffles me why you can't access the swatches here. Instead, you have to just add, double click, and or insert. And you can insert and delete as well. You can select, as soon as you select one, you'll notice that one's bigger. That's the one that's active. And you can go here and change colour. So you can go and maybe make it green. And you can see you get a variety of different colour effects, different parts of this image. And you can also change blending mode as well. So create even more interesting designs. Maybe like go with difference is a good one. And you can see the effect there. And again, you've got green this side. You've got obviously blues and purples here. And click close. And again, you can always still resize this, and you can see that effect of that gradient, which again does not follow the pattern design. When this is the pattern design, this little bounding box here. All the rest is just duplications. Now, once you've done that, you can then go to layer and then down to rasterize again. So rasterize, and this time make certain you turn that off, preserve layer effects, always useful if you don't want the effects to be there. And click rasterize. Well, you can manipulate this even more now with filter effects. It's a pixel layer. Any pixel layer can be modified by filters. Now you can use layer and new layer filters, and there's lots of options here. Distort, there's twirl, etc. But the one I want is not available here. But I just wanted to point out you can manipulate it with a live effect, which is just adding a layer on top. So if you do this, you simply go twirl, and this twirl is applied on top as a layer, and you can see the effect there, and it's live. You can go back to it and modify this image in more ways as well, and it's a live one, so you can just go there, and you can also delete it. So I don't want it really, so I just select there, just delete, so it's gone. The mirror effect is only available in the filters. So I'm just going up here now to filters, and with filters I can go to distort and mirror. Mirror is great. I think it's one of the most powerful ones. Really great filter for creating all kinds of unusual effects. And I'm just going to go there, and you can see I can go 5, 6, and you can create all kinds of designs. You can also modify the position of the origin, so you can simply click here. Instead of having it here, you can drag it out here to create different designs that way. You can also modify the input, so you can drag this around. You'll notice there, look, it clicks in place. Hold down the Alt Option key, and you can see then it moves around like that. And you can see now it clicks again when I don't have the Alt or Option down. Now sometimes weirdly it seems to ignore that. You might find it works fine. It moves around. You can also of course just click on it and enter a value, say 90 or whatever you want. However, I don't want 6, I want 2. So let's just put it back to 2. Often I move this back and forth until I'm happy with the design. So I'm just going to go with, I don't want this. So I don't want this sort of effect. But of course you might be happy with that. But I find it looks a bit odd when you're looking at these and suddenly you've got this sort of crunched effect. So you can just work at it, just put it like that. So I get nice little, just maybe a bit, yep, something like that. That's what I want for that swirl design. And now click apply. And there it is. Now it's not a pattern, so you can't resize it, do those sort of things in the way of a pattern design. But you can, of course, convert this pixel layer into a pattern. At any point you can always convert it again. So you can always go to layer and new pattern layer from selection. Just go for that again. Or another option, you can always use again this rectangular marquee tool. So you can select a particular part you might be interested in, maybe this. So you select this. With that, you can then go up here and again layer and new pattern layer from selection. And that just uses that. And you can see you've got a different design from the previous one. And again, you got here the move tool, go to mirror, and then you can reposition. I'm just going to go over here, make certain the other one's not visible, makes it very hard to see. And you can see here's the pattern, just this bit here, the bounding box. And also you can, again, resize that and reduce it down. Exactly same before, you can go and apply a style. So just click any of these styles. And then you've got that slightly 3D depth design very quickly added. Or maybe click one of these other styles. Again, please check my previous video on how to create styles. And again, all you have to do to modify them is click on effects so you can see the different settings that you can go with 3D like this. And close. So there you have it. A very quick, very unusual swirl pattern design with a bit of depth involved. All done in Affinity Photo. And fairly quickly, depending obviously on the steps and approach you go. I say there's a couple of ways of doing it. Using pixel layer approach or using a pattern and then continuing with the style applied then. Hope you found this of interest. Any questions? Please let me know in the comments below. A like or dislike, always appreciated.